Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We hope you enjoyed the first part of our wild story, Billionaire Dad's Secret Scam to Test His Lovers. The twists and turns were just the beginning, and trust me, this part 2 is packed with even more jaw-dropping moments. You won't believe what happens next. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the exciting stories we have lined up. And if you're enjoying the journey so far, go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps us out. Now, grab your popcorn, sit back, and let's jump right into the shocking reveal of what his nanny did. This changes everything. Maximilian sat alone in the quiet of the mansion, the weight of the previous conversation still pressing down on him. The space felt so vast and empty, echoing with the silence that had been growing louder over the past weeks. He looked at the clock. Late afternoon, but he hadn't been able to shake the feeling that his entire life was falling apart around him. His thoughts kept circling back to Isabella. She was the one thing he hadn't failed, the one thing in his life that wasn't complicated by lies or manipulation. And yet, he felt as if he had failed her too. He had promised her that he would change, that he would stop being the man he had been. But how could he keep that promise when everything felt so uncertain? Maximilian stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the sprawling grounds. The mansion that once felt like a fortress now felt like a prison. He had everything anyone could ever want: wealth, power, luxury, but it all seemed hollow now. It wasn't enough. None of it was enough to fill the emptiness inside him. He turned away from the window, pacing back and forth in the room. His thoughts collided in a chaotic mess, and he found himself at a loss for what to do next. The tests, the games he had played with the women in his life, they had only led to heartache and betrayal. He had wanted to know who truly cared for him, but he had gone about it all wrong. What was he supposed to do now? How could he fix what had been broken? A knock on the door broke his thoughts. He turned to see Charlotte standing in the doorway, her expression hesitant but determined. "Max," she said softly, her voice still carrying the tension of their earlier conversation. "Can we talk?" He nodded, motioning for her to enter. As she stepped into the room, he could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but also something else, a hint of care, a willingness to understand. Maximilian leaned against the wall, folding his arms across his chest. "What is it, Charlotte?" She looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "I know we've both been through a lot, and I know I've said some things that probably hurt you, but I want you to understand something." Maximilian raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "What?" "I didn't just stay because of your money," she said quietly, stepping closer. "I stayed because I thought you were someone worth loving. I wanted to help you, Max. I wanted to be there for you, not just as someone who shared your wealth, but as someone who believed in you. Even when everything started falling apart, I still believed in you." Maximilian felt a knot tighten in his chest. Her words hit harder than he had expected. He had wanted to believe that she was different, that she cared for him beyond his wealth, but now, hearing it from her directly, it felt real. It felt like a lifeline in the midst of everything that had gone wrong. "I didn't know how to let anyone in," he admitted, his voice tight with emotion. "I've been so afraid of being hurt, so afraid of losing control that I pushed everyone away. I didn't know how to love. I didn't know how to trust." Charlotte's eyes softened, and she reached out, gently placing a hand on his arm. "It's okay to be afraid, Max, but you can't keep shutting people out. You don't have to do this alone." Maximilian swallowed hard, fighting the overwhelming emotions that were threatening to consume him. "I don't know how to fix it, Charlotte. I don't even know where to start." "You start by being honest with yourself," she said softly, "by facing the truth. You can't keep hiding behind your wealth, your status, your tests. If you want to fix this, if you want to rebuild what you've lost, you have to start with the truth, and you have to be willing to open up to the people who care about you." Maximilian looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. For so long, he had used his wealth and power as a shield, keeping everyone at a distance. He had built walls around himself to protect his heart, but in the process, he had cut himself off from the one thing that mattered most: love. "Do you think it's too late?" he asked quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Do you think I can still make things right?" Charlotte took a deep breath, her expression thoughtful. I think it's never too late to make a change. But you have to start now. You have to be willing to let go of the past, to stop playing these games. If you want to rebuild, you have to be vulnerable. You have to let people in. Maximilian nodded slowly, the truth of her words sinking in like a heavy weight. He had been hiding from himself for so long, afraid to face the consequences of his actions. But now, with Charlotte standing in front of him, offering him the chance to start over, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to make things right. I don't know if I can do this, he said softly, his voice tinged with fear. But I want to try. For Isabella. For myself. Charlotte smiled gently, her eyes filled with understanding. That's all anyone can ask for, Max. Just take the first step. The rest will follow. Maximilian took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling over him. For the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't going to be easy, but he knew that he couldn't keep running from his past. He had to face it, confront the mistakes he had made, and start the painful journey of rebuilding the relationships he had broken. Thank you, Charlotte, he said quietly, for believing in me. She nodded, her smile warm. You don't have to thank me, Max. I'm not the one you need to apologize to. He looked at her, confusion flickering in his eyes. Who else do I need to apologize to? Charlotte's expression softened, and she gave a small, knowing smile. You'll figure it out. But start with the one person who matters most. Maximilian's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit him. He needed to apologize to Isabella. She had been the one constant in his life, the one person who had never wavered, and he had almost taken her for granted. I'll make it right, he whispered to himself. I'll make it right. Are you still with Max on this emotional journey? Can he rebuild his life, or has it all been too broken? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay with us as Max tries to fix the pieces of his shattered world. Do you think he can find redemption, or is it too late? Let us know your thoughts below. The day felt heavier than most, weighed down by the uncertainty of the road ahead. Max had spent the morning with Isabella, trying to make up for the time he had lost, but the guilt still gnawed at him. Every smile she gave him, every moment of laughter felt like a reminder of the father he hadn't been. He had promised her that he would make things right, but he wasn't sure how to do that. The mess he had made, his manipulation of the women in his life, his emotional walls, his need for control, seemed impossible to undo. And Mira, the one person he had trusted the most, the one who had shown him care even when he hadn't asked for it, she had betrayed him in her own way. But as much as he hated to admit it, he still felt something for her. A part of him still wondered if there was a chance to rebuild what they had. But that was something he couldn't focus on right now. He couldn't fix everything at once. He had to start with what mattered most, Isabella, and finding a way to trust again. Max stood up from the table, wiping his hands on a napkin. The remnants of breakfast sat forgotten, the cold cup of coffee a distant memory. He'd been trying to figure out what his next step should be, how to move forward after everything he had done. He couldn't keep hiding from the truth, not anymore. He needed to face the hardest part of this journey, admitting to Isabella that he had been wrong, that he had failed her. She deserved more than a father who was too consumed by his own ego to see what was right in front of him. As he walked into the living room, he found Isabella playing with her dolls, her face lit up with that innocent joy that Max had nearly forgotten existed. She didn't know the full extent of what was happening around her, but Max knew it wouldn't be long before she started to sense the tension. Children weren't stupid. They picked up on things, on emotions, on unspoken words. He cleared his throat, drawing her attention. Hey, sweetheart. Isabella looked up, a wide smile spreading across her face when she saw him. Hi, Daddy. I'm playing tea party with my dolls. Do you want to play too? Maximilian smiled, his heart aching. I wish I could, kiddo, but I need to talk to you about something first. She tilted her head slightly, curiosity in her eyes. What is it, Daddy? Max sat down next to her on the floor, careful to keep his movements slow and gentle. He didn't want to scare her, but he needed to be honest. Sweetheart, I've made some mistakes, big mistakes, and I've hurt people, including you, and I want you to know that I'm sorry. I've been so focused on other things, on things that don't matter. that I didn't realize how much I was pushing people away. Isabella's smile faltered slightly, and she placed her doll down carefully before looking up at him. What do you mean? You didn't hurt me, Daddy. You're always here with me. Max felt his throat tighten. How could he explain this to her? How could he tell his little girl that his choices, his actions, had affected everything around her? He had always tried to protect her from the truth, but now it was time to stop hiding. I know, baby, but I haven't been the best father I could be. I've been selfish, and I've let my fear and anger take control of me, and I'm really, really sorry for that. I promise I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better for you. Isabella's small hand reached up, touching his cheek softly. I like it when you smile, Daddy. You should smile more. You don't have to be sad. I know you're trying. Max blinked back tears at her innocent words. She had no idea the weight of what he was saying, but in that moment, she was the one teaching him the most important lesson of all. Love wasn't about being perfect. It was about trying, and it was about being there when it mattered most. I will, sweetheart, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I will smile more. I will try harder to be the dad you deserve. She grinned, her face lighting up with happiness again. That's all I need, Daddy. Just you. Max hugged her tightly, the warmth of her small body in his arms grounding him. He had a long road ahead, but with her by his side, he felt like he could face anything. After a few moments, Isabella pulled away and looked up at him. Daddy, are you going to talk to Mira too? You're still friends, right? Maximilian froze, her innocent question hitting him harder than he had expected. Mira. She had been a part of their lives for so long, and despite everything that had happened, there was a part of him that still wanted to fix things with her. But could he? Could he forgive her for the way she had manipulated him, for the way she had pushed him to see the truth at such a cost? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know if Mira and I can be friends anymore, but I do know that I need to figure things out and make things right. Isabella's eyes were wide, full of concern. But you should try. You should try to be friends. I think she cares about you. Max smiled at his daughter's wisdom. She had a way of seeing things clearly, even when adults couldn't. I'll think about it, sweetie, I promise, but right now, I have to focus on being a better father to you. Isabella nodded, her face lighting up again. That's the best thing you can do, Daddy. Max felt a pang in his chest. She was right. He had spent too long trying to find answers in the wrong places. The answer was simple. It was love. It was family. It was the people who cared about him, even when he didn't deserve it. He had been blind to that for far too long. Are you still with Max on his emotional journey? Can he really change and rebuild the life he's broken? If you've been following along, make sure to like this video, comment below, and hit that subscribe button. Max has a long road ahead, but your support means everything. Do you think he can find redemption and rebuild with Mira? Let us know your thoughts, and stay tuned for the next part of Max's story. The days following Max's conversation with Isabella passed in a haze of self-reflection. It was clear to him now that he had been so wrapped up in his own fears and insecurities that he had ignored what truly mattered. His heart felt heavy with the realization that all the walls he had built around himself had done nothing but isolate him, pushing away the very people who cared for him. Max's mind kept returning to Mira. He couldn't ignore it any longer. She had been a part of his life for so long, not just as his nanny, but as someone who had seen him at his best and his worst. Yet, the truth of her betrayal haunted him. She had manipulated him, pushed him into making decisions that had hurt everyone around him. Still, there was a part of him that wanted to forgive her. He wanted to believe that the woman who had cared for Isabella, who had been there when no one else had, could be redeemed. But was he ready to forgive her? Could he trust her again? Max spent the next few days going through the motions, trying to focus on Isabella and their life together. Every time he looked at her, he was reminded of his failures and his promises to change. She deserved a father who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, who wasn't so caught up in his own self-doubt that he pushed away the love that was offered to him. On the third evening after his conversation with Isabella, Max found himself standing at the door of Mira's. apartment. He had thought long and hard about this moment, about what he would say, how he would confront the woman who had broken his trust. His heart was pounding, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, and Mira stood there, her expression unreadable. She looked as composed as ever, but Max could see the subtle signs of exhaustion in her eyes. She'd been carrying the weight of their past too, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his own actions. "Mira," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We need to talk." She nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Max walked into the apartment, the familiar scent of her lavender perfume filling the air. It was strange. This place had once felt like home, but now it felt foreign, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. They both sat on the couch in silence for a few moments, the tension between them thick. Mira finally broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. "You came here for a reason, Max," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "What do you want from me?" Max swallowed hard, the words he had been rehearsing feeling stuck in his throat. He had been angry, hurt, and confused, but now as he sat across from her, he realized just how much he had been avoiding the truth. He had to let go of his fear and finally face what was right in front of him. "I want to understand," he said quietly. "I want to understand why you did what you did, why you pushed me so far." Mira's expression softened, and she sighed deeply, as if releasing a breath she had been holding for far too long. "Max, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought that if I made you see the truth, if I showed you how much you were pushing everyone away, you'd finally wake up. But I see now that I was wrong. I hurt you. I hurt you more than I could ever imagine." Max's heart twisted in his chest. He had wanted answers, wanted to hear her say something, anything, that would make sense of everything. But this wasn't about making sense anymore. It was about facing the pain, facing the truth of their actions, and seeing if they could find a way forward. "I know I can't undo what I did," Mira continued, her voice shaking. "But I want to try, Max. I want to make things right. I want to be part of your life again, if you'll let me." Max took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in. He had spent so much time pushing people away, testing them, hiding behind his wealth and power, that he hadn't even realized how much he had needed someone who truly cared for him. And now, here was Mira, offering him a chance to rebuild what they had, if he was willing to take it. But the question remained. Could he forgive her? Could he trust her again, after everything that had happened? "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Mira," Max said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can ever trust you the way I did before. But I can't keep holding on to the past. I can't keep running from it. Maybe we can figure it out. Maybe we can start over, but it's going to take time. It's going to take work. From both of us." Mira's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she nodded. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Max. I want to prove to you that I'm here for the right reasons. I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now, but I'm asking for a chance." Max looked at her for a long moment, his heart torn. This wasn't going to be easy. There were no guarantees, but he had to try. For Isabella, for himself, for the possibility of a future that wasn't defined by fear and manipulation. "Okay," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "We'll take it one step at a time. But no more games, Mira. No more tests. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. No more lies." Mira nodded, her expression filled with relief and gratitude. "I can do that, Max. I will do that." Max exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lifting off his chest. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a clean slate. But it was a start, a beginning. And that was all he could ask for. If you've been following Max's journey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to stay tuned for the next chapter of his redemption. Do you think he's making the right choice? Can he really rebuild his relationship with Mira? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And keep watching to see where this emotional roller coaster takes Max next. Maximilian stood at the door, watching Mira leave. The conversation had been more difficult than he had anticipated, but in the end, something inside him had shifted. A part of him still felt the sting of betrayal, the weight of everything that had been broken between them, But he also understood now that forgiveness didn't happen overnight. It was a choice, and it would take time. As Mira's figure disappeared down the hallway, Max closed the door gently behind him and leaned against it. The tension in his chest hadn't fully released. There were so many questions, so much uncertainty. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. He had decided to try, and for that, he had to trust in the process, however slow and painful it might be. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts, and he turned to see Isabella standing at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide and concerned. She had been quieter than usual these past few days, sensing the shift in the air. Max had tried to shield her from the tension, but she was too smart for that. "Daddy?" she asked softly. "Are you okay?" Max smiled at her, his heart aching with a mixture of love and regret. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm okay, just working through some things." Isabella hesitated for a moment, then padded down the stairs, her small feet making no sound on the hardwood. Floors. She walked up to him and took his hand, her gaze soft and full of concern. "You're not sad anymore, right?" Maximilian looked at her, his heart swelling. He had been so focused on his own pain, his own mistakes, that he had forgotten what really mattered, the love of the one person who had always been there, even when he couldn't see it. "I won't be sad anymore," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise. I'm going to do better. For you, and for me." She smiled at him, the weight of her small hand in his enough to fill him with warmth. "Good. I like it when you smile, Daddy. It makes me happy." Max chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "I'll smile more. I promise." They sat down together on the couch, Isabella curling up against him as he wrapped an arm around her. The stillness in the room felt peaceful, but Max knew that the hard work was just beginning. The journey to rebuild, to trust again, would take time he wasn't sure he had. But he would do whatever it took, for Isabella and for himself. Later that evening, Max found himself standing by the window, looking out at the darkened garden. The mansion felt quieter now, emptier in a way that made him wonder if he had been too focused on the wrong things for too long. Was this what he had been working toward all these years? The wealth, the status, the control? Had it been worth the cost of losing himself, of losing the people who truly mattered? He closed his eyes, the cool night air brushing against his face as he took in a deep breath. He could still hear Mira's voice in his head, her words about trust and forgiveness echoing in his thoughts. She had been right about one thing. He couldn't keep running from the truth. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Max needed to fix himself first. He needed to be the kind of father Isabella deserved, the kind of man who could face his flaws and still stand tall. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a chance to change. The following days passed slowly, but each one brought a small step forward. Max spent more time with Isabella, focusing on their bond and leaving behind the distractions that had consumed him. He stopped playing games, stopped testing the people around him. The weight of his actions didn't magically disappear, but he started to feel lighter. The burden of control he had been carrying for so long began to loosen, little by little. But there were still moments when doubt crept in. There were still moments when he questioned whether he had made the right choice with Mira, or if he could ever trust her again. Those doubts lingered in the back of his mind, but he pushed them aside. He wasn't going to let fear dictate his life anymore. One afternoon, as Max and Isabella were playing in the garden, the doorbell rang. Max felt a jolt of apprehension. He wasn't expecting anyone. He glanced down at Isabella, who was busy arranging her toys on the grass, and then walked toward the door. When he opened it, his heart skipped a beat. Standing in front of him was Mira, looking different from how he remembered. Her face was softer, less guarded. She held a small envelope in her hands, her expression uncertain. "Max," she said quietly, "I know I have no right to ask for this, but I've been thinking. I want to make things right. I've made so many mistakes, and I know I can't undo them, but I want to try. I want to prove that I can be trusted again." Maximilian's chest tightened. He wasn't sure what to say. Part of him wanted to close the door and walk away, but another part of him, The part that still cared, the part that still remembered what they had shared, knew that this was the moment. This was the chance to either walk away or take a step toward healing. He looked at her for a long moment, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Then, slowly, he stepped aside, letting her into the house. "I'm listening," he said, his voice low but steady. Mira nodded, stepping inside with the envelope. She handed it to him, her hands shaking slightly. "This is for you," she said. "It's everything. All the things I should have told you before, all the truths I kept from you. I've written it all down. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, but I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Maximilian took the envelope from her, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know if he was ready to hear everything, but in that moment he realized that this was the first step, his first real step toward the truth, toward trust, toward rebuilding. He looked up at Mira, his expression softening. "Thank you." She smiled faintly, but it was enough. They both knew that this wasn't the end, but it was a beginning. As Mira left, Max stood there for a moment, holding the envelope. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew that, for the first time in a long time, he was ready to face it, head on, without fear. Max's journey isn't over yet. What will he do with the truths Mira has revealed? Can he rebuild trust, or has it all been too broken? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Will Max be able to forgive, or is it too late? Stay tuned for the next part of his redemption story. Maximilian sat at the dining table, the envelope resting in front of him. His hands hovered over it, unsure of what he was about to uncover. Mira's words had already shaken him, and now, this letter, the one that she said held everything, all the things she had hidden, felt like the final key to his redemption, or perhaps the final nail in his coffin. He ran his fingers along the edge of the paper, trying to steady his breath. For years he had surrounded himself with walls, walls built of wealth, status, and tests, and now he was about to tear them down, piece by piece. But was he ready for the truth? His thoughts drifted to Isabella, the bright light in his life. She deserved a father who could be honest, who could give her everything without the baggage of his past. And maybe, just maybe, that meant confronting the darkest parts of himself. He tore open the envelope, the sound sharp in the stillness of the room. As he unfolded the letter, his eyes scanned the words, Mira's neat handwriting staring back at him. His pulse quickened. "Max, if you're reading this, it means I've already given you this letter. I've been thinking long and hard about how to say all of this, and I know I've made mistakes, big ones. But I also know that you deserve to know the truth. First, let me say that everything I did, every move I made, was because I loved you. I know this may sound insane, especially after everything that's happened, but it's true. I didn't just care for you as a friend or as a nanny. I cared for you as a person, as the man I thought I could help. I've spent years watching you build walls around yourself, refusing to let anyone in, and I convinced myself that if I showed you the truth about the women in your life, about the choices you were making, it would wake you up. But I see now that I was wrong. The things I did to manipulate you, the tests I set, the lies I told, they were all because I was afraid of losing you, afraid of being left behind when you finally saw the truth about me. But in trying to help, I only hurt you. Max, I wish I had been honest with you from the start. I wish I had told you how I felt, but I was terrified. I let my fear control me, and I hurt you in the process. You didn't deserve that. You deserved someone who would love you for who you are, not for what you could give them. I know now that I've failed you, and I've failed myself too. But please understand that when I pushed you away, when I made those decisions without consulting you, it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I was afraid of losing you. And in the end, I lost everything. I don't expect your forgiveness, Max. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I am truly sorry for everything I did to hurt you. I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive me one day. I've given you all the truths I can, and if you choose to walk away from me, I'll understand, but I will always love you. Mira Maximilian sat back, the letter trembling in his hands. His mind raced as the weight of her words settled on him. She had been in love with him. All these years, everything that had seemed like manipulation, like control, had it really been fear? Fear of losing him? Fear of being pushed aside? But how could he trust her again? How could he let go of the pain she had caused? He closed his eyes, trying to process the emotions that flooded him, the anger, the betrayal, the lingering feelings of love that he had buried deep down. He had spent so long protecting himself, running from the truth, that he had ignored the very people who had cared for him. Mira had been wrong in how she went about it, but her confession made him see something he hadn't allowed himself to see before. He had been equally wrong. He had tested people. He had pushed them away. He had used his wealth and his need for control as a shield against the vulnerability that love required. And in doing so, he had created the very distance he feared. Max stood up and paced across the room, the letter still in his hands. He could feel the weight of Mira's words pressing down on him, but something inside him was shifting. He had always been afraid to face the truth of his own feelings. But now, he understood. He couldn't keep running from it. He couldn't keep hiding from the past, from the people he had hurt. Max grabbed his coat and headed for the door. He didn't know where he was going exactly, but he knew he needed to take the next step. He needed to make things right, not just with Mira, but with himself. It didn't take long for him to reach the place he needed to be. Standing outside Mira's apartment, Max took a deep breath and knocked on the door. His heart was pounding, but he felt a sense of calm he hadn't known in years. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was facing his fears, and whatever happened next, he would accept the consequences. Mira opened the door, her eyes immediately meeting his. She looked as though she had been expecting him. The silence between them was thick, laden with the weight of everything they had said and everything that still needed to be said. "I've read your letter," Max said softly, "and I understand now. I understand why you did what you did. But that doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make everything okay." Mira nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know. I never expected it to, but I needed you to know the truth. I never meant to hurt you, Max." He took a deep breath, letting the words settle before speaking again. "I can't promise that things will go back to how they were. I can't promise that I'll ever fully trust you again. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to face what happened, and maybe we can figure this out." Mira's face softened as she stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to him. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Max, but if you're willing to try, then that's all I can ask for." Max nodded, his heart heavy but hopeful. He had made mistakes, but he was ready to take the first step toward making things right. With Isabella by his side, with the lessons he had learned, he knew he couldn't keep running from the past. It was time to rebuild, and maybe they could both find a way to forgive. And there you have it. Billionaire dad's secret scam to test his lovers, but what his nanny did shattered everything. The twists were bigger than anyone could have imagined, and the consequences, well, let's just say no one saw that coming. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Did you see the nanny's actions coming? What do you think of how it all unfolded? And of course, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on more shocking and exciting stories just like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.